You are born in June 1946. Queens, New York. Not Manhattan, Queens. This distinction will bother you for the rest of your life, though you'll never admit it out loud. Your father is Fred. Fred builds affordable housing in Brooklyn and Queens and calls it an empire. You watch him count money at the kitchen table and decide that whatever he's doing, you're going to do it bigger. Louder. With your name on the outside of the building. You are not a subtle child. You are the loudest person in every room you enter, and you enter every room as though you have already been announced. School is something that happens to you between the ages of being loud and being louder. You attend the New York Military Academy at 13, not because you are troubled, exactly, but because your parents sense that regular institutions are not equipped for whatever you are. You thrive there. You like uniforms. You like rankings. You like knowing who's in charge and making sure everyone knows it's you. College is Fordham, then Wharton. You graduate in 1968. You tell people you graduated first in your class. There is no record of this. You don't consider this a lie. You consider it a preview. Your father gives you a small loan of $1 million. You will later describe this loan as modest. $1,001,974. You take it and build. You build in Manhattan because Manhattan is where the real money is, and you have decided, with the certainty of a man who has never seriously been told no, that you belong there. The Grand Hyatt. Trump Tower. Fifth Avenue. You put your name on the outside of the building in letters the size of a reasonable car, and somehow the city lets you do it. The 80s are very, very good. You are on every magazine cover. People who have never met you talk about you at dinner parties, and not always in the way you prefer, but you have already figured out that being talked about is the whole game. You buy a yacht. You name it after yourself. You buy a helicopter. You name it after yourself. There is a pattern here and you are fully committed to it. You write a book called The Art of the Deal and it sells 4 million copies. You did not write most of it, but your name is on the cover, and by now you have learned that having your name on things is more or less the same as having done them. Then the 90s arrive, and they arrive hard. The casinos fail. Not one casino. 3 casinos. The Taj Mahal, the Plaza, the Castle, all in Atlantic City, all carrying your name in oversized letters, all declaring bankruptcy within years of each other. You opened a casino and lost money at it, which is statistically difficult to do. The casino is the one business mathematically designed to favor the house. You were the house. The airline fails. The mortgage company fails. The steak company, and yes, there is a steak company, fails. You owe $900 million. The banks don't foreclose because they owe you $900 million, which means you are, paradoxically, too broke to be bankrupt. You call this a negotiating position. Remarkably, it works. You restructure. You license your name to buildings you don't own, attach your face to products you don't use, and spend 15 years convincing the world that the brand survived intact. The brand survives intact. In 2004 you get a television show. The Apprentice. You sit at the head of a boardroom table and fire people with 2 words that somehow become the most recognizable phrase in America. You are not playing a character. You are playing a perfected version of yourself, decisive, powerful, unbothered by nuance, and the audience loves it. 14 seasons. Millions of viewers. The show does something the buildings never quite managed, it makes you famous to people who have never been to New York. Famous to everyone. Famous in a way that money alone cannot buy. This is where it gets interesting. This is where the story stops being about real estate. Because somewhere between the 14th season of a reality television show and the moment you start genuinely believing you could run the country, somewhere in that gap between entertainment and ambition, something shifts. You have spent your entire life performing the role of the most powerful man in the room. And it occurs to you, slowly then all at once, that there is one room you have never been in. One room with no one above you. One room you cannot put your name on, yet. And that's where your story ends, and where the story of what you accidentally started begins. In June 2015, at the age of 69, he rode a golden escalator down to a lobby full of paid supporters and announced he was running for President of the United States. The political establishment laughed. Cable news gave him $12 billion in free airtime because he was good television. This was, in retrospect, one of the more consequential mistakes in the history of broadcasting. He won the Republican primary by doing something no one had done before, treating every debate like a boardroom firing, every rally like a stadium concert, and every press conference like a negotiation where he was already winning. 16 other candidates tried conventional politics. He tried a different genre entirely, one that looked less like a campaign and more like a season finale. His opponents were prepared for a political campaign. He was running a media franchise with electoral consequences. November 8, 2016. He won. The transition was, by all measurable standards, chaotic. Staff came and went through the West Wing at a pace that suggested either a revolving door or a fire drill. 14 chiefs of staff. 19 communications directors. A national security advisor who lasted 24 days, a record that still stands, largely because no one has tried to break it out of a sense of basic dignity. He governed the way he built, loudly, with his name on everything, convinced that the loudness was the point. He signed executive orders at a desk in front of cameras, holding them up like report cards. He called foreign leaders from his personal cell phone. He hosted state dinners at his own golf club and charged the government for the rooms. Some people called this corruption. He called it efficiency. The difference, he would tell you, was branding. He renegotiated trade deals. He held rallies in arenas as though the campaign never ended, because for him it never did. The campaign was the governing. The governing was the brand. It was never entirely clear where one stopped and the other began. A pandemic arrived in 2020. He suggested, on national television, that injecting disinfectant might be worth looking into. The manufacturer of the disinfectant issued a statement asking the public not to inject their product. This had never happened before. Not once in the entire history of cleaning products had a company been forced to issue that particular warning. He lost the 2020 election by 7 million popular votes and 74 electoral votes. He did not agree with this assessment. He spent the following months arguing, litigating, and hosting rallies in which he argued some more. Democracy wobbled. January 6 happened. History took careful notes. He ran again in 2024. He won again in 2024. He became the first convicted felon elected to the American presidency and responded to this fact with the energy of a man who considers it a personality asset. He was probably right. At 78 years old, he returned to the White House, the oldest person ever elected to the office, carrying 34 felony convictions and roughly the same energy as a man who has just won an argument he started himself. He came back with the same certainty he had carried into every boardroom, every building, every sentence he had ever begun and refused to let someone else finish. The world had changed around him repeatedly. He had not changed at all. Whether that was the secret or the problem depended entirely on who you asked. You always knew your name would be on the biggest things. You just never specified what kind of things. Not the buildings, necessarily. Not the stakes. Not the show. Something bigger. Something that couldn't be foreclosed on, couldn't be licensed away, couldn't be restructured in bankruptcy court. A name on history itself, permanent, impossible to revalue, impossible to take back. The question history is still working out is whether that was the plan all along, or whether the plan was simply never to have one.